when suddenly this wife turns toward her husband, puts her finger in his chest and says, "You need to get a second job," and continued on down the steps. And they said he turned white, just humiliated him. And I'm going to tell you, on the way out, he's not going to break down, "I can't believe how unloving you are. You're so unloving to me. You hurt me." No. He's going to white-knuckle the car. He won't have sex with her for 3 days because you can't have sex with a drill instructor, He's just going to close off, at which time she videotapes and takes the videotape of him at the steering wheel and goes to the pastor, goes to the counselor, goes to her sister, goes to her mother, goes on Oprah. "See how he treats me? Oh, he does. But Emerson comes along and says, "That's very painful. Apparently you're married to Hitler's distant cousin." But can I ask a question? Did anything happen prior to this that may help me understand why he did that? And women will always tell me. They're not trying to keep the information back. They just see it as irrelevant. He should know. He should know that I was just having a PMS moment, pre-murder syndrome. He should know. He should know. He's strong enough. He should be able to take it. He should know that I say things when I'm hurting. But when he says things to me, it's because he wants to hurt me. Oh, really? Is that the way your son's going to operate? Your son is going to, when he says something, it's because he intends to hurt her? Really? So only women speak this way because they're hurting, therefore it's fully justified. And when men speak ways or do things, that it's because they intend to hurt. Men are mean, women are wonderful. Women are sweet dewdrops. Men are Judases. Now, we have to come to grips with the fact that women have vices and virtues and men have vices and virtues. And the last time I looked, we all needed the Savior. And so it's crucial that we come to the realization that we have different sin issues. But we're both in need. The problem, of course, is we pass judgment again on one another because he reacts in ways that you wouldn't. And he seems to be childish, and his spirit sinks over issues that he should know. He should know. He should know. Deborah Tannen, in her book, "You Just Don't Understand Women and Men in Conversation," says this: "Having done the research that led to this book, I now see that my husband was simply engaging the world in a way that many men do as an individual in a hierarchical social order." Hierarchical, there it is. Hierarchical social order in which he was one up or one down. And let me just say that men see the world in terms of rank. And they function very well. You have CEOs, you have managers, and so on and so forth. You have generals, you have colonels, you have majors, you have the president, vice president, senators, congressmen. This is the reflection of the male psyche. We function very well in rank as long as there's honor and justice. From the top down, if there's honor and justice, then we function well. We come to a point where we say, "I'm a 3-talent man, he's a 10-talent man." I envy him at times, but you know what? At the end of the day, he's got all this responsibility. And as long as he treats me with honor and justice, I'm going to be loyal. In fact, a lot of times the great leaders will say to Joe, "Hey man, don't you quit on me. If you quit, everybody's going to know I'm a failure. I'm succeeding because of you. They just don't know that. Are we treating you honorably? Are we treating you justly? Do you need more money? What can I do? I need you, man." Well, you talk about a guy that's just going to stand. He will die for that guy. We function very well. But here's one of the things. I know, ladies, you confront your husband to connect. I understand this. You confront to connect. But remember me saying this, overkill. You come on so strong that he thinks you confront to control. And you're trying to get on top. That's why he said, "You're just trying to boss me. You're just trying to wear the pants." All these phrases, listen back to what he's saying. He's speaking to you out of his nature. But men can't put a voice and vocabulary to their emotions because of this compartmental tendency. They don't have it always right there that they can review and feel and think. They just put it in the compartments and get out in the field because they got a job to do out there. And they're not talking with one another about their feelings. They just get forward. So you've got to understand, he's very sensitive to things. He's very sensitive to what I call the put down. I'm married. I've got 4 children. 3 by birth, 1 by marriage. You talk about things that just can kill him. And I will tell you, if he's reacting in unloving ways, decode. Did something happen that he felt you were making some statement that he's not a good provider, he's not a good protector, that he's a wimp, he's not strong? I mean, these are very sensitive issues in the same way that he says, "You're going to have your second piece of chocolate cake, huh?" Oh, so it's okay for you to be sensitive, right? And he's wrong. He's immediately wrong. You go up in smoke. But he can't have his sensitivities? See, it's interesting today that where women feel something, then the men must be wrong. But when men feel something, they just need to get over it. And we've got to come to grips with the fact that this is how our sons are going to be treated. We've got to change this. Have you not read who made them from the beginning, made them male and female? And I'm going to tell you, there are mixed messages today to men. Missy and Stu. Missy complains to Stu, I can't believe you buy into that notion that the man is the breadwinner and defender of the castle. We're equal and don't you forget it. And while I'm expressing things that upset me about you, I can't believe you walked ahead of me to the car. I almost fell on the ice. What if I'd broken my leg? Would your insurance cover me? Plus, why did you let our teen son make fun of me and say that I look like a calf on ice? Stu, you're pretty low on that what it means to be a human being scale. Stu is crushed. He is put down for who he is. He closes off his spirit, walks away from her, and refuses to talk for 2 days, at which time she videotapes in pink and takes his reaction here to all the key people. See how he treats me? See how he treats me? See how he treats me? Yeah, but did you do something or say something prior to? Well, yeah, but he should know I didn't really mean it. And also in this case, notice the next message. Protect me, but don't be paternalistic. Protect me, but don't be paternalistic. Protect me, but don't be paternalistic. We're equal, but you protect me. We're equal, but you protect me. We're equal, but you protect me. Well, protect yourself if we're equal. And don't be complaining then because I didn't help you. You see, there's a mixed message. And what happens sometimes when guys in this culture try to help, they get smacked. And then if they don't help, they get smacked. And some guys are, this just infuriates guys. And your son is going to get frustrated because of this mixed message. In fact, when I was getting my doctorate, most of the people in the class were women, and they're feminists. And I said one night, hey, if we go over to this bagel shop and get a bagel and a burglar jumps out with a knife to threaten our lives, am I to die for you or are you to die for me? They all looked at me and grinned. You're to die for us. I said, what happened to equality? See, it's a huge mixed message. You can't have it both ways. Now, have you ever written a card to your husband that he didn't keep? You said, I love you so much, exclamation point, pink heart, X's nose, X's nose, X's nose, and I love you so, and you give it to him. And then the next day you go into a study and you're looking around for the card, he's sitting there, what'd you do with that card that I gave you yesterday? You threw it in the waste can. Well, I read it. Right? Hey, if I could share with you how to write a card to your husband that he won't throw away, would you be interested? It's called Beyond Your Words of Love, Say It His Way, the card he'll keep. We're starting these cards, and because these cards are not out there. They're just not out there, remember? And so, Beyond Your Words of Love, Say It His Way, the card he'll keep. And you use your term of endearment, Dear Poochie Poo. But then you say, I was thinking about you after what Emerson said, that you would literally die for me. That is an overwhelming thought to me. Thank you. And then sign it this way, ladies. You listening to me? With all my respect. Don't put the word love there. With all my respect, the one who still admires you. It's at this point, ladies, that your husband may be tearing up. I've done this enough now that the testimony comes back. This is when men say, I almost lost it when you read that card. See, this is deep. This is the kind of thing that motivates men to serve and die. This is the kind of, he literally sacrifices his life. And men today are viewed as expendable. But we need to revisit this. This is one reason we ought to respect men, because if Al-Qaeda came in here, the men are not going to jump under the chairs. They will be dead. We will die. That's just who we are. That's just who we are. And we need to be respected for that and appreciated, even though we have our warts and problems. Just as we need to value for your mothering and your caring, even though there are times you get upset, we need to see these deeper things that God has placed there as gifts to us and value the gifts rather than cursing the consequences of sin. So write that card to him. And I had one gal come up to me and say, what was that word again that you had? I said, respect? Yeah, I keep forgetting. Respect. And because I joke, I thought she was joking with me, and I started laughing and said, that's a good one. But she said, I'm not joking, I forgot. I said, that's like a guy coming up to me. What's that word again? You mean love? Yeah, you spell L-U-V, right? L-U-V. Love, I got to remember that. I got to write it on my hand there. Okay, C is conquest, H is hierarchy, A is authority. Angels fear to tread where we're about to go. He has a desire to be strong and to lead and to make decisions. But now here's what we're going to say. It's called Leadership 101. It's the basic of all leadership principles. Let's suppose Monday you go to work and there are 1,000 employees and the board meets and says, you know what, we've been watching, we've been paying you $80,000 a year, but we're going to pay you $1 million a year plus a $5 million bonus at the end of the year if you will basically be responsible for all 1,000 employees. Do you want the job? Oh, yes. Great. Hey, by the way, you have authority to do nothing. What are we setting that person up for? This is Leadership 101, and we know it. If you give someone primary responsibility, you must give them equal authority to carry that responsibility out. If you give someone primary responsibility, but you say they do not have equal authority, you set them up for, or in this case, they'll move into passive irresponsibility. They'll collect a paycheck, but they ain't going to do anything because you've already said they can't do anything. They're unable to do it. Does anybody see men quitting on their wives and being passively irresponsible? It's happening all over the place. And the number one complaint women have isn't because men are dominant. The complaint is he's not the spiritual leader. This is the evangelical complaint from wives. He's not the spiritual leader. He's not the spiritual leader. Women want him to be the spiritual leader. But I'm going to tell you why he's quit on you and why he's moved into passive irresponsibility. Because you violated Leadership 101. How so? When you come to a point where there's a decision that's about to be made and he differs with you and you differ with him, you say, you can't do that, we're equal. You can't do that, we're equal. You can't do that, you're equal. You know what you're doing? You're exercising veto power, which means you're exercising the authority. And here's the deal. Do you expect him to be responsible to die for you? Yes. Then he is at least 51% responsible for you and the family. Fair enough? I'm not saying he's 99% responsible, but I'm going to say he's 51% responsible. Fair enough? Yes. Then he needs to have 51% authority. And if you say you're egalitarian completely, then don't you complain about some of those traditional female complaints. You're equal, 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 equal. And actually, egalitarianism sounds nice, but it's not working. And people who are, quote, quote, egalitarian are forever arguing, fighting, trying to position who's the greater expert, who has the greater knowledge, who has the greater wisdom. When they come to these point of conflicts, there's no really deference at times unless one is just extremely passive. But by and large, you've got to come to this point. If you hold him 51% responsible, then you're not egalitarian. You've already established that. And if you are in that position, then you need to go on record. Here it is that he has 51% authority. Go on record. Go on record. Let him know. Why? Because when you argue, he doesn't understand why you're arguing. He thinks you're trying to wear the pants. He thinks you're trying to exercise authority. He feels that you expect him to be primarily responsible, but he then feels that you're the one that's going to make the decisions. And he just locks up on that. He gets angry, and either he moves into passive irresponsibility, or he becomes this, quote, quote, dominant male who's just going to do what he wants to do. And then you all get together and talk about how he just makes decisions, doesn't even take me into account. Well, let's go back. Was that ever his intent? Let's go back. What maybe have precipitated that? So what we have to do is unpack this for a moment. See, I'm going to tell you that God calls him to be a manager of his family. 1 Timothy 3:5, if a man does not know how to manage his own household, he sees himself as called by God to be that manager. 1 Timothy 3:12 must be good managers. And these are the elders and deacons who model, but they become elders and deacons having demonstrated what God expects of all men. And I'll tell you this, if you show contempt toward his desire to be a good manager, that is equal to him showing contempt toward your desire to be a good mother. And I know that God calls him to be strong on your behalf. 1 Corinthians 16:13, act like men, be strong. Or 1 Kings 2:2, be strong there and show yourself a man. And what's interesting to me, Deborah Tannen, this great secular linguist, says men are taller, more heavily built, lower pitched voice. She calls these markers of authority. Nature highlights this. These markers of authority are in men. Life isn't fair. And she says women, on the other hand, are smaller, slighter, and have high-pitched voice. These are not markers of authority. And you can sense these markers of authority when you have a 16-year-old boy. In fact, Dr. Dobson talks when he was younger, he didn't know his dad was home, his mom was there, and he called his mom a dummy. And just then, this huge hand came around the doorpost, grabbed him by the shirt, chest, literally lifting him up. Jim is hanging there. And he says, who's a dummy? I'm a dummy, I'm a dummy, I'm a dummy, I'm a dummy, I'm a dummy. But if you undermine that authority, you're going to undermine your family. You're violating Leadership 101. And this is why you won't find this scripture preached very often, 1 Timothy 2:12. But I do not allow a woman to exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. Boy, that won't be touched in too many churches today. You talk about a reaction. But let me share something with you. This verse is not seeking to be unfair to women, but it's seeking to be fair to men. It isn't fair to a man to give him 51% responsibility and for his wife to have 51% authority. And thus Paul says, I do not allow a woman to exercise authority over a man. And furthermore, research points out women don't want to be authoritarian. Women don't want to be over. That's not a turn on to them. They want to be mutually deferential. They want process. I don't care if we go to California for vacation or New York. I just want us to be happy. Women process things differently. And so they're really not trying to exercise authority. She is deferential. She wants harmony. And she does confront to connect. She doesn't confront to control. And let me say that, gentlemen, you're misinterpreting. Her spirit is, I want to control you. Even though women say that, really a lot of times they fear that he's not taking into consideration the family unit. And a lot of times what drives that aggressiveness is fear, not a desire to control you per se. She feels you're not taking everything into control, and fear is what's behind this, not this desire to be the authority figure. She doesn't want to wear the pants. That does not turn her on. You need to trust your wife's heart, even though she's coming across in a way that if a man came across that way, it is control. But she's not a man. So decode. Is he reacting in unloving ways? Could it be that you've done this? You can't do that. We're equal. So here's what you need to do. You need to go on record and guard against the attitude that says that you're responsible, but I'm in charge. Now, I recommend you do what Sarah and I did. In 1973, when we got married, we decided I'd make the major decisions, she'd make the minor decisions. And that's worked very well, and we recommend couples do that. We've not had a major decision yet. Is that a major decision, Sarah? Nope, that's minor. Is this a major decision? Minor. This? Minor. 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 I is insight. C is conquest. H is hierarchy. A is authority. I is insight. Appreciating his desire to analyze and counsel. Men are solution-oriented. He helps by solving problems. When one man comes to another problem with a problem, we kick into solution mode. That's just the way we are. That's how we help. In fact, Shaunti Feldhahn is doing this new research, and she called me. She said, Emerson, in doing this research now among women, I asked the question. I said, I know that your husband tends to give you a solution when you don't want a solution. Instead, you want emotional support. I know that. But having said that, the solution that he gave you, was it good or bad? 80% of the women said it was good. I knew men were solution-oriented. I just didn't know if their solution was good. But these women are saying, yes, it's good. It's just that that wasn't what I needed at that point. So God has given your husband with great insight, and he's correct a lot of times in what he says. But I'm going to tell you, when you say, quit trying to fix me, and particularly if you instinctively know you need empathy, when he's trying to help you, and you just blast him as being unloving and uncaring, your son is just going to shut down on that. He only goes through that 2 or 3 times. He's actually trying to be helpful only to get whacked emotionally and verbally. And it shuts down, stops. And then you wonder why he doesn't connect with you. You know, and I preach through the years, you must listen to your wife's intuition because God will reveal things to her that he won't reveal to you in order to show you that you need her. And I preach that, but I think that's all we preach today. Women alone have insight, and men are jerks, men are idiots, men are stupid. I mean, we have allowed the culture to infiltrate it, and so we look at men and say there's something seriously wrong. And we've got to stop that. He's created in the image of God. He's not wrong, he's just different. And I'll tell you one of the reasons for that. 1 Timothy 2:14, another passage we don't see preached. It was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman being quite deceived fell into transgression. What this verse is saying, and Paul says it in 2 Corinthians 11:3, but I'm afraid lest as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness. Eve was deceived. Eve was deceived. What about Adam? He disobeyed. Adam knew, and he did not act according to what he knew. Every man here knows his dark side. We're very conscious of it. But you women lose touch with things because emotionally you're made differently. For instance, where do you women sin today? This is even more interesting in the culture. You sin primarily in 2 areas. When your husband fails to love you, you react, but we give you grace there. And when you're exhausted with the children. But it's no longer gluttony, it's an eating disorder. It's not an outburst of anger, which Galatians calls sin equal to sorcery. It's PMS, and it's a chemical imbalance. we have taken all women's issues and make it a psychological, physiological issue. It is no longer a sin. It's not gossip. You're just concerned about others. Now, the reason I say that is very important. Here's why. Your husband knows that he's unrighteous. He looks at you and sees a lot of righteous things. You don't struggle in the areas he struggles with. Sexually, things about you just don't have the same. He looks at you as virtuous, and he sees himself as lacking some of that. And so he sees himself as unrighteous. He sees you as righteous. But there comes a moment when you see him as unrighteous. But this is the most serious point. You come to a point where you see yourself as self-righteous. And you've now committed the number one sin that Jesus had to combat against, because he couldn't get through to the religious, self-righteous person. That's the number one sin. Why? Because they're deceived. They don't see it. Self-righteous, religious people. This is why Jesus said they will kill you thinking they're doing service to God. This is about certain religious groups right now. This is a spiritual problem we have around the world, and it's a big problem because they think that they are doing what God wants them to do. And when you get into that position, you have all license to kill anybody, to get upset about a cartoon, but you can hate Jews, kill Jews, behead people. You just don't see it. You don't see the duplicity whatsoever. You just don't see it. Self-righteous religious people do not get it. Jesus told this parable in Luke 18:9. And he also told this parable to certain ones who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Viewed others with contempt. Do you view your husband with contempt? Could it be that you see yourself as righteous and you're trusting in yourself? And that's not to put you down, but I'm going to tell you, your husband won't connect with you because you can't get close to a self-righteous person because they're always judging you. They're always critiquing you. They're always evaluating you. And particularly if he offers something. Like Stu says to Missy, I hesitate to bring this up, but sometimes I feel when you are with your friends, you badmouth others who have made you mad. You're discrediting these folks. Missy, you're too good of a person to get caught up in all this gossip. Missy yells, you're right about being too good of a person. Who do you think you are? All of you men are brainless and uncaring. Don't you try to fix me. Women today are the better sex. We listen better, we understand better, and we empathize better. You insult me. She heads to the garage, slams the door, and leaves. Well, I'm going to tell you, he's not going to voice that again. And that's why you need to guard against the attitude that says, I'm better than you and I'm smarter than you. And you have no right to give me any counsel or share with any of me. You know, women say, I just need my husband to validate my feelings. You just need to validate my feelings. And what's he thinking? He's thinking, but that feeling's not valid. And sometimes he'll tell you that's just not right. And you go through the roof, and he says, you know, it's not worth it. If I say something, I get in trouble. If I don't say something, I get in less trouble. I mean, I get in trouble, but I get in less trouble. So I'm just not going to say anything. And God has given this man to you. He is not as loving and sensitive as you are, but he's a man of truth and integrity. And sometimes he sees things, and you need to receive that. If you whack him with that, you're actually hurting yourself, and he's feeling disrespect, and he'll pull back. Diane confessed that she mentally put down her husband. She mocked his ideas and his reactions or responses and secretly made fun of his opinions. One day when she visited him at his office, she was struck by the tremendous respect his co-workers, his secretary, and his boss showed him. She shared how she got a knot in her stomach when she heard a man who's older and more experienced than her husband say yes sir to him. And she was both frightened and ashamed when she saw how his young secretary looked up to and admired him. Then she said this, when I got to the car, I started crying. The thing that disturbed me most is that I was judging him, not because of his actions or because he isn't a good husband, but because he wasn't what I wanted him to be. As I said, Eve had paradise, but she wanted more. Ladies, you need to be guarded about this. But your husband has a need to be appreciated for his insight and his counsel. And even though you may not need it, tell him, I don't need that right now, and I just need a listening ear. But at the same time, don't mock those ideas. Don't put that down. Don't accuse him of being unloving. He'll just withdraw from you, and then what? You'll feel unloved. And I said, go back. What did you say? And you'll understand perfectly why he's pulling back from you. And especially if you've come across as self-righteous, he's afraid of you. He's a strong man who would die for you. But I'm going to tell you day in and day out, he is afraid of you. He's afraid of you. He's afraid of you. He's afraid of you. And you don't see it at all. Because he doesn't break down and cry, and he doesn't say, I'm scared of you. Okay, R, relationship. C is conquest, H is hierarchy, A is authority, I is insight, R. And some of you women saying, oh no, you've got through these points, now you got two more, and I'm feeling like I'm the reason. I thought he was the problem, and now you're throwing on. Now I feel like it's really me, it's me. I've ruined him, I've ruined the marriage, I've ruined our family, I've ruined the cosmos. I've ruined everything, it's me. What do I do? Just go to him and say, will you forgive me for being dishonoring? But no, you don't understand. I've really been venomous. And I ruined everything. I don't think he can ever forgive me. No, just go to him and say, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me for having dishonored you? But are you sure? Yes.
honey, I'm really sorry. I've ruined everything. I've ruined the marriage. I was blaming you. It's really me. After Emma's gone, I wanted to crawl underneath the seat. I just wanted out of here. I wanted to just disappear. I'm so sorry for dishonoring you. I ruined everything.
Do you really mean that?
I do.
Really?
Yes.
Drop it. Forget it. The game's on. Here's your drink. Let's go watch the... Every strength has a back-sided weakness, and every weakness that you see has a front-sided strength. And what has sent some of you women through the roof about him saying, drop it, forget it, kicks in just then. He doesn't say, we need to talk about this late into the evening. What did you mean 2 years ago when you said this to me? He doesn't remember 2 years ago. And that's what bothers you a lot of times. But I'm going to tell you, when you speak the honor code, it's just that quick. Do it, ladies. Trust me. And men, you are men of honor. And don't use this as a time just to kind of elbow her, because she's going to lose confidence in what I'm saying, and you know that everything I'm saying is true. So don't do anything that's going to cause her to call into question the wisdom of what I'm saying, because you're just going to take advantage of this moment to kind of get back at her. Don't do that. You're doing yourself no favors. Okay, relationship, a shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. As we said, she wants to be close face-to-face. Now we're going to talk about shoulder-to-shoulder. He married you because you loved and liked him. I love Song of Solomon, where God speaks to them in 5:1. He calls them friends, O lovers. He called them friends. And then she says in verse 16 about him, he is wholly desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend. I mean, it's a powerful thing, friendship. But after marriage, as we point out, a negative, unfriendly attitude can surface. That's why the older women are to encourage the younger women, Titus, to love their husbands. That's phileo, remember? Not philet, but phileo. And to be his friend, and then to love her children. That's phileo too. Be friend. In other words, everybody in the family units knows you love them with agape, but they don't think you like them because you are unfriendly. You're unfriendly. And in the home, you're not unfriendly in stranger groups. In this situation, you're a friendly person. And that's who and that's who you are. And he married you. But in the home, you're mad at him. And you don't like him, and you tell him you don't like him. And after a while, this just wears a guy out. It just wears him out. If he treated you that way, you'd be worn out. In fact, Deborah Tana did some interesting research. She had two 20-year-old women, two 16-year-old girls, two 12-year-old girls, and two 6-year-old girls. And they were best of friends, these dyads. So the two 6-year-olds were best of friends. And she wanted to see what the best of friends would do in a room. There were two chairs there, nothing else. They videotaped, and they wanted to see what these women and girls would do. What did the women and girls do in relationship to the two chairs? They either turned in the chairs, put their elbow on the armrest, and talked face to face, or they literally turned the chairs, crossed their legs, leaned forward, and talked face to face. All of them. Then she put two 20-year-old men, 21-year-old men, two 16-year-old boys, two 12-year-old boys, two 6-year-old boys. What did the men and boys do in relationship to those chairs, except the 6-year-old boys who didn't sit in the chairs? They sat back like this and just looked straight ahead, didn't move the chairs, didn't turn the chairs, and would not talk a lot. The women would talk. The men would just kind of sit and periodically look at one another. And then she tried to listen in on the content of conversations. Who had the most intimate of conversations? It was the 16-year-old boys, and it blew all our researchers away. They hardly said anything, just sitting there, and just quiet, shoulder to shoulder. And at one point, he turns and says something very revealing. The other doesn't even look at him, just kind of. See, women pass judgment on the quality of men's relationship because men don't relate with one another the same way women do. But that does not mean that men won't die for one another. We do. But it's been said that boys should go to school when they're 10 years old, not before, because they learn best doing activities outside, listening to stories, and just being very aggressive outside. But we bring them inside, tell them to sit still, teach them concepts. Jesus, the master teacher, had 12 men, spent most of his time outside doing activities and telling parables. Very important that we understand that God has made men different. And men tend to be energized through shoulder-to-shoulder activities. It's better to talk to a man shoulder to shoulder, driving in a car, standing on a fence, looking out over something, shoulder to shoulder. When you put him in that situation face to face and it's a hot issue, remember his tendency is to want to move away from that. And you need to allow him to look away, particularly if it's emotional. Don't you? And you have this need to look at him. Just learn to look into the distance and talk shoulder to shoulder, or just be with him without talking at all. But see, what happens, you can't imagine that relationship could be, he goes hunting, goes 3 days up, comes back and says, how was your time with Bob? It was good. What did you talk about? None. You didn't ask Bob about Mary's pregnancy? Mary pregnant? But I'm going to tell you, when you do shoulder-to-shoulder activities, just being with them activities, energy is going into them. Energy is going into them. Shoulder-to-shoulder activities without talking. Ladies, stop talking. That's why women say the key to marriage is communication. No, you know that the Bible teaches quietness. You know that. You just don't, you think it's sexist, these Paul. Why does the Bible say that? Because you think you can't solve anything unless you talk. No. Trust me. Shoulder-to-shoulder activities feeds a friendship. And when that friendship is being fed and the energy is going into him, then he